Good morning.
Hi, is Christina there?
Pardon?
Is Christina there?
No, you have the wrong number.
Oh, I was looking...
Christina who?
Christina from Alberta.
Well, I do not...
Are you related to a Christina?
No, I'm not that I recall. But what part of Alberta is she supposed to be living in?
The cold part.
You mean Tofield?
Yeah.
You're calling Tofield, Alberta here.
Uh-huh.
And where are you calling from?
Well, I'm in Houston, Texas, and here's the deal. So Christina is a listener of a podcast that I am the host of. Are you familiar with the Maybe God podcast?
A what?
It's a podcast, like a radio show where we talk about God and stuff.
Oh, no, I do not know of anybody.
Oh, you should listen to it. I think you might enjoy it. You sound like a nice lady.
I am a truly believer of Jesus Christ.
That's great. Me too. I'm a pastor in Houston.
Really?
Yes, ma'am. So how's life in Alberta?
Right now, we're in with that disease that is coming all over the world.
Right. Have you stayed healthy through all this?
Yes, we have so far.
And you're shut in, I guess, like all of us in America?
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
How do you pass the time?
Well, I do a lot of volunteer work. I also am a great sewer. And
so you've been sewing any of the masks that people need?
Yes, I do.
Wow. As a Christian and a believer, have you thought about where God is at in all of this crisis and this COVID-19 business?
I'll tell you what I believe.
Okay.
I believe he's controlling, is looking down, and saw what the world was doing. And it was time to do something else. People were getting too greedy.
You think he's teaching us a lesson? He's trying to correct our behavior somehow?
Well, he's showing us that he's still in control, and we have to believe in him.
That's great. Listen, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to a total stranger.
Well, thank you for calling accidentally.
Well, if you can think of who Christina is, give me a call back, okay?
Oh, I wish I knew.
All right, my dear. You stay safe and stay healthy.
Well, this is quite something. God bless.
God bless you.
Yes.
Bye-bye. Today on Maybe God, I called listeners all over the world, completely out of the blue, to hear about the impact of the coronavirus lockdown on their lives. But what I got was so much more. It's an episode about pain and fear, joy and resilience. Welcome to Season 4 of Maybe God.
I'm indifferent.
I don't believe in God.
To the existence of
God is not judging them.
I don't have proof.
I don't know how to pray.
They're judging themselves.
You know, where is God in all of this? This is my home.
God exists.
What does it say about God that he created the orgasm?
I don't pledge allegiance to anything.
I don't pray.
Only to God.
If there was a God,
And I thought,
I just have this understanding that life is hard.
he could never love me after this.
God is still good.
You're listening to Maybe God. I'm Eric Huffman. Hey, Maybe God family, and welcome to Season 4. We've really missed you all so much, I can't believe it's been almost 10 months since we released a full episode. Last July, we knew that we were going to take some time off. Things were getting very busy at my church, The Story Houston. My mom was battling pancreatic cancer, successfully, I might add. But we were also starting to dream about this new project, a feature-length documentary about some of the Central American refugees that we had followed in our last episodes. And we knew that was going to take some time. So we thought to ourselves, maybe we'll take a few months off and be back in the studio by Thanksgiving. Well, as they say, the best laid plans of mice and men often go awry. And by the time I was back and ready to jump into the studio and record a new season, COVID-19 shut everything down. Since then, I've been doing what everybody else has been doing, trying to stay safe and sane and somewhat employed. My life since Friday the 13th of March has felt like one long Zoom meeting. As a pastor, I've been taking calls from people who are hurting. Yesterday, I spoke with a man whose father died after contracting the virus. The day before, I heard from a friend who lost his job. This morning, I got an email from somebody who is running out of food and they're desperate. Like most pastors, I now have a whole new job description. All our services have moved online, so in addition to teaching the Bible and taking care of people, I'm now a televangelist, apparently. I have no idea what I'm doing in this new world. Welcome to the Story's special online worship service, the COVID-19 edition. I'm Eric. I'm the lead pastor here at The Story, and it's really, it's good to see you in this way. Even though I can't see your faces, I know you're here. And I will begin with a confession. Y'all, I do not know why God allows things like this COVID-19 crisis to happen. I know that's a question on many people's hearts. Where's God at a time like this? Why does God let something like this happen? I don't know that. But I know I'm not alone. Nobody really knows what they're doing anymore. We're all carrying these burdens that we didn't even know existed 3 months ago. So with our first episode of 2020, instead of diving right back into another controversial topic, maybe God style, I felt like the best way to start this new season in the midst of a scary pandemic would be to reach out to some of our listeners who've reached out to us since we started this podcast 2 years ago. We have listeners from all 50 states in the U.S. and from 40 other countries across the world. And many have emailed us to tell us what maybe God means to them. And your feedback is everything to us. But during a time like this, the human connection that we share, it means more than ever. We're in this mess together. We're fighting the same fears together. And we're all searching for ways to cope. Okay, here's the thing. With every listener that I've called, I've asked the same rapid-fire question. So, number one, what is your favorite COVID-19 guilty pleasure / coping mechanism?
Dr. Pepper.
Dr. Pepper. You're a Texan through and through, boy.
Walking my dogs outside.
That's so sweet and innocent.
Oh, we've got these sea salt caramel chips that are like chocolate chips
Now you're talking.
that I just find myself going to regularly.
Binge watching on Netflix, particularly The Tiger King.
Everybody's got one, so don't be ashamed of yours.
No youth sports.
So wait, your favorite guilty pleasure is abstaining from something.
Yes.
One thing I learned about our Maybe God listeners is that you're way too PG when it comes to your guilty pleasures. Or maybe you're just not willing to admit to a pastor who calls you out of the blue that you're really struggling with the stress of this lockdown. It works both ways, you know. I don't really want to talk to you about my guilty pleasures either. Recently, while hosting a video Bible study on Facebook Live, I spilled beer all over my favorite Bible. But in the heat of the moment, I didn't want anybody to know what had really happened. So this is what I said instead. I just spilled a Coke all over my Bible. Awesome. Does that mean you're going to hell? I hope not. That was a cold-blooded lie, and I'm not proud of it. I'm simply saying that we're all doing the best we can to cope with this new reality. I don't really believe that God sent this pandemic to punish us, but hearing our listeners describe all the pain they've overcome pre-COVID-19 and how it's made them who they are today, it really gave me hope that maybe God really is somewhere in this mess, teaching us something important about resilience. So this episode is a tribute to you, every single one of our Maybe God listeners. On this podcast, we often say that God speaks through our stories. Well, these are your stories, so settle in and listen close for the voice of God.
Hello?
Hi, is this Carolyn?
Yes, it is.
Carolyn, this is Eric with the Maybe God podcast.
Well, good morning or good evening to you.
Yeah, it's 3:33 in the afternoon here. What time is it there?
It is 8:30 on a Friday morning.
What does this time of day have you doing?
Oh, actually, just having a cup of tea in bed.
A cup of tea in bed. Is it Earl Grey?
Oh, it's New Zealand breakfast tea.
New Zealand? You have your own tea there. Screw the English.
Yeah, Twining's brand.
I love it.
Yeah.
Carolyn lives in Christchurch, New Zealand. She's the mother of 2 girls. After several weeks on lockdown, her daughter's school just reopened, and she and her husband are finally back at work. So tell me, how are things going there, Carolyn, and what is life like under this COVID-19 crisis?
It's very peaceful. I think it's given us all a chance to slow down and look at our blessings and what we have and appreciate them a bit more rather than running around and trying to be frantically busy and not appreciating what you have.
Yeah. You are a silver linings gal in a sense that you would rather stay focused on the positive.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've spent too many years not thinking much of myself and beating myself up, which still sometimes happens occasionally, but not with the frequency it used to.
Yeah.
I just needed to change my mindset.
Of course. How long ago did you become a Maybe God listener?
It was probably around the time of my breakdown, about 3 odd years ago.
When Carolyn was just 5 years old, her dad was coming home from a business trip, driving on a winding road when he lost control of his car and careened into a gorge. In the middle of the night, she and her family were startled awake by a phone call. It was the police calling to say that Carolyn's father was dead.
I got so frightened I threw up. It was just chaos, and a bit blurry for me, being 5. I think Mum shut off emotionally.
Yeah.
And there were 7 in my family, so I was being the youngest. I just felt like I didn't belong there, like I was invisible.
Yeah.
And, Mum was crying all the time, and I understand. I used to have to watch her sell possessions of ours because we didn't have money to pay the bills and things because Dad had a lot of debt.
Right.
So it was just like a cloud of sadness. And Nana came down from Christchurch, Mum's mum, and the uncle came down. And that's when it sort of started.
Carolyn says that from the age of 6, she was sexually abused by her uncle. The abuse went on for over 6 years.
It started by sitting on his knee, and I thought that was nice because I missed my dad. And things just got a little bit weird, and he used to come and kiss me goodnight, but he kind of do more than that. And I just froze and pretended I was somewhere else. I disassociated quite a lot because he told me it was our secret and can't tell anybody, and I just felt dirty and wrong, and I thought, did I do something wrong? Is it my fault? I must be bad. And one time when he was doing something to me, Nana caught him and she slapped me across the face probably a couple of times and told me I was a dirty girl and to leave him alone and get out. And I just always felt invisible and unloved and unwanted from then, like I was bad. And so I just retreated into myself, really suppressing those things, which I work out now quite dramatically that the more you suppress it, it's just going to come up one day. And it did.
Carolyn says her history of sexual abuse led to a series of unhealthy relationships, including her first marriage. Eventually, she reconnected with her high school sweetheart and settled into a much healthier relationship, but she never really dealt with her past until she turned 50 and the emotions came crashing down.
I thought I don't want to be around anymore because I'm tired of the pain.
Wow.
I just found the pressure too much.
Did you try to take your own life?
Yeah, I hung myself. My husband found me hanging in the stairway and I was unconscious. And he is laying on the kitchen floor coming to and freaking out because I just thought I fell over and hit my head. But then the police turned up and the ambulance guys were there. And, yeah, So I ended up going to hospital.
Wow.
Yeah.
Carolyn, how are you now?
I'm very good now compared to this therapy. Thank God, it has helped a lot.
Carolyn has been in therapy ever since. She's learned the value of talking about her past. She also looked for ways to connect to God after her meltdown. That's when she came across the Maybe God podcast through a Google search. She sent us a message on Facebook in 2018 after she listened to the episodes on near-death experiences. The story of Crystal McVeigh, a sexual abuse victim who died and met God in heaven, brought Carolyn to her knees.
Immediately I was engulfed in this golden, pure light, and I just fell right to my knees. And I remember just worshiping and crying because I recognized God. I didn't meet God. I recognized him. And immediately in that moment, he wrapped himself around me. And what he is love. The most purest form of love. Here, this God that I had feared my entire life, upon me being there, scooped me up and held me in his love. God knew how dirty and broken I was, and yet he scooped me up. And it changed me. It freed me.
Listening to that girl, I sat there bawling for an hour afterwards and going, oh my God, that was me. That was me. If she can get through
right,
that sort of thing, I can too.
Yeah. I can't overlook the fact that you live in Christchurch, and Christchurch went through something relatively recently that was quite traumatic as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Carolyn's personal struggles aren't the only source of anxiety in her life. Her hometown, Christchurch, has been through so much in these last few years. In 2016, a major earthquake hit and caused significant damage to the town.
Dozens of people are reported dead now, hundreds of people still trapped in that rubble. The quake was centered just a few miles from Christchurch. It toppled buildings, cracked roads, knocked out phone lines. At least 65 people were killed at that point. Thousands were already made homeless.
Carolyn says it felt like the city had just recovered from that when on March 15th, 2019, a madman opened fire on 2 mosques, killing 51 innocent people.
A gunman with an automatic weapon has opened fire on a mosque in central Christchurch. There were 500 people in the mosque at the time of the shooting. All schools in Christchurch are now in lockdown, as is the Christchurch City Council.
I'm going, oh my God, how much more can we go through?
Yeah.
It's scary. It was not far from the girls' school.
Oh, wow.
It was really hard to get to them, and I couldn't get them for a while because they were on lockdown. So it was just my anxiety has been through the roof. Yeah, but I'm learning how to manage it.
Yeah.
Quite well. But I still have my moments, but just learning how to open up to people and just talk. And I feel safer talking to, say, God, because he's not going to tell anybody what I'm going to say. And it feels easy to talk to. There's no judgment. There's just love.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm getting all tingly now.
I am too. I am too. I got chill bumps. Okay. When you think about these crises and your faith, where do you see God in the midst of times like these?
For me, I see him as the centre of the storm, but he's the calmness. If you know where he is, he's the calmness. But I find that people in Christchurch are quite resilient too. And when things like this are happening and have happened, they reach out more to each other, strangers. We're very kind, and I think that helps us through tough times.
Hearing the resilience in Carolyn's voice gave me hope. When you've overcome monsters like abuse and depression, even a global pandemic can't shake you. I started making these calls to help our listeners cope, and before I knew it, they were helping me. This isn't just a time for sheltering in place, watching the news with masks on our faces. This is the time to tell our stories and to remember we've felt pain before. We've been scared before. We've experienced loss before, and we're still here, alive and together.
Hey, Pastor.
Hey, Clay. How's it going, man?
Really good.
Yeah.
Nice to hear from you.
You too. Thank you for letting me just call you out of the blue, man.
Dude, it was so funny. I was like, is this like a bot or something, like, from your show or something? So that's really cool.
After some pretty heavy phone calls, I decided to call a listener named Clay who lives outside of Dallas. Clay sent us an email a few months ago that was really over the top complimentary of the podcast, and so maybe I just wanted to hear someone sing our praises for a little while. I checked him out on LinkedIn, where I found his picture, and he's got the most awesome, friendliest smile, and so I expected our conversation would be lighthearted and fun. But instead it turned into one of the most profound conversations I've had throughout this entire crisis.
I got married when I was 23, so we're celebrating 15 years this December. Beautiful relationship, beautiful kids, wonderful family. We've got a perfect life, man. Perfect. So to pepper in all of that really, really...
It usually takes men a while to open up to a perfect stranger, but not Clay. Within the first few minutes of our conversation, he was going deep. And when I asked him how he and his family were doing through this COVID crisis, Clay didn't hold back.
This year has actually really started out on a pretty horrible note for us. In early February, my 17-year-old nephew took his life.
Oh, man.
In Lubbock, Texas. And so, man, I drove out there in the middle of the night to be with my brother. It was his first son. So that's kind of how the year started. And then I found out I was going to be effectively losing my job. I mean, I'm totally cool with it.
Yeah.
I was praying for a change, and that was the change. And so I'm good with that.
Right.
And then did the funeral, in all the wake of that. And then me and my wife had the miscarriage.
Wow.
But death of a family member, losing my job. Hey, we're pregnant. So now there's panic. Then a miscarriage. Now there's more grief. And then the pandemic hit. So
yeah, it's like a lifetime worth of grief and stress all packed into 1/4 of 1 year.
Oh yeah. I mean, what we had to walk through with my nephew and my brother was absolutely the hardest thing that I have personally had to do, and that includes burying a daughter 6 years ago. So I don't want you to get the wrong picture. Through all of that, like, we still are really grateful, really happy, really satisfied people. Honestly, man, like, the last 8 weeks have been like really awesome. I mean, because I've been home and we've had a really, really lovely time just like slowing down, hitting the brakes, enjoying the kids, working on little house projects. I mean, just slowing down.
It's a little silver lining there for y'all.
It is, man. I mean, it really is.
And you mentioned burying a daughter. Like, that is something I can't just gloss over. Like, that's heavy grief that never goes away.
Right. Our daughter, that was 2014. We got a sonogram from her, like 23 weeks. And they said, hey, this is bad. They told us that she had a condition that wouldn't, be viable for life, past birth. It's called anencephaly, like the top of her brain didn't develop. So we decided to, keep her to term, deliver her, and keep her as long as we could have her, which ended up being about 90 minutes.
Wow.
And we had our firstborn, my daughter, we had her, right? So we couldn't like totally check out. And so there was still lots of beauty and lots of joy, but all mixed in with the grief. And that was the lesson that we learned through it, was that our life sort of takes place in between, between the complete joy and the complete sorrow. It's like the edge of a knife.
Clay was raised by a Christian family in Lubbock, Texas. He decided to follow Jesus at the age of 18, and now at 37, his faith is as strong as it's ever been. When I asked him why he's a Christian instead of something else, he told me that he knows we're not here by some accident, that there's somebody in charge, and he believes that that's the God of the Bible. I can't help but think, after becoming a Christian in your late teens, did you ever feel like you expected more from God, more protection?
No, not at all.
Why not?
Because he just kind of kept showing up. He just kept showing up with people and with provision and there were people that would come to our house and bring dinner and, do house projects around the place. And he just kept showing up. So no, I have absolutely no reason. And in fact, 2 years to the day after we lost our daughter, we were in a hospital room with a couple that had a daughter with the same condition. And so we were going with that through them. Amazing. And they're now some of our closest friends.
Wow.
Of course. And there are moments when you're mad, especially with my nephew. There were moments when it was just like, how are we going to go on? How is this even going to be possible to wake up and breathe?
Yeah.
No, I don't stop believing, but that doesn't mean that there are some times when I can despair and just get swallowed by the grief, completely swallowed. And I'm still learning how to go through that.
Sometimes I don't understand how people like Clay, who've experienced so much pain and so much loss, continue to believe in God with such conviction. I'm not sure my faith would be strong enough to hold on. I'm still mad at God for letting my mom get cancer, and she survived. And here's Clay still believing, even though he's lost so much. I can't quite wrap my head around it. But I also know that suffering can be a gift, because people who've suffered, they know something that the rest of us don't. Some secret wisdom, a window to a different dimension. I've seen it too often to ignore. The deeper a person's pain has been, the greater their capacity for mercy and love becomes. Clay doesn't remember how he found this podcast, but as soon as he did, he says he plowed through every episode. But the first one that he listened to was, Do Queer People Belong in Church?
And I am not going to lie to you. It discombobulated me for weeks.
What do you mean?
It just turned a lot of things on its head. I've got lots of friends who are in that zone, same-sex wise.
Yeah.
What it did for me was it gave me some new language to use, which helped an understanding that we really are truly just on a level playing field. If you look at the way that God sees us. Yeah. I'm pretty sure I wept during those episodes. All of that stuff just wrecked my life. I mean, in a really beautiful way. I got coffee with an old friend of mine. I've known her since 4th grade. She's married to a girl. They're beautiful. They're lovely. They're just amazing people. And not that it needed to be said, because she knows what I believe. She's a Christian, but I still felt compelled to just reiterate that they're lovely. They love each other. It's beautiful, and that's good, and God loves them. He looks on them with compassion and love. And I don't know why I needed to say that to her, but she was just dude, shut up. You don't have to say that. But that's true, and I love you. But what I liked about it was, I think just too few people, especially in the Christian space, wade into those hard waters. I think we can easily spend too much time preaching and teaching and not enough time listening and asking questions. So I think that there's, listening to you and Julie, it's there were just two people that asked a lot of questions, listened, and then just tried to understand what those answers told them. I mean, I haven't heard anybody else like you guys do that.
Wow. And thank you for the encouragement. You're so right about what's going on in the world and how people that are turned away from Christianity, it's almost always because of Christians who don't listen and only talk. And I got to tell you, you're not going to accept this praise because I can already tell the kind of guy that you are, but you are exactly the kind of believer we need more of on the front lines because of how you value the inherent worth of each individual. And I know you thought your lesbian friend over coffee dismissed your comments, but I guarantee you she did not. I guarantee you she took it home with her and is nourished by those words more often than you could possibly know. And that's what we're here to do, is to shine the light of Christ. And so I applaud you for that. I know you're going to say it's all the grace of God, and you're right, but I'm glad you're letting him use you in that way.
Well, I mean, I'll take that.
Good.
I will. I'll receive it.
If you were to speak directly to people who, during this crisis, have gone through the crucible like you have, and they feel like they're at the end of their rope, they've got a loved one who's sick, or they've lost their job, what do you say to them about where God is to be found in a crisis like this? Where do you find God in the darkness?
We may not see it, but he's still very, very much in control. I mean, there were darker times in human history where he was still in control. I mean, look at the majority of the beginning of the 20th century. Look at World War II. Look at fill in the blank. So I would say that he's still there. And whether we may not feel or believe it, it's still true. Our feeling about it doesn't change who he is. We just have to choose to find a way forward. And that is an everyday thing that has to take place over and over again.
Yeah.
And we find the people that we love that will help us get there. And we look for the, great, beautiful things around us that are always taking place. And then soak those in with the belief that it will be put right. Not tomorrow, not in a week, it might, but forever it will be set right.
Amen. Amazing. I want to thank Clay for being so real with me. He didn't have to share any of that with us, but he did it anyway. And I, for one, needed to hear it. I imagine this is one of those interviews that I'm going to be coming back to again and again in the future. Whenever I'm in a dark place, just so Clay can remind me how, whether I feel it or not, God's love is still the same. My feelings don't change who he is. And one day, he's going to take everything that's wrong with this world, and he's going to make it right.
Hello.
Hi, is this Debbie?
Yes.
Debbie, this is Eric with the Maybe God podcast.
Oh my goodness. Wow. The Eric.
In the flesh. You got me.
Oh my gosh. You sound just like you do on your podcast.
Debbie lives in Huntsville, Alabama, which she is quick to point out is not the real Alabama. It sits on the Tennessee border and is home to an active Army base. That's what brought Debbie and a lot of other families to the area. She and her husband of 20 years are both military officers. She's retired, but he's still active. Their oldest son was recently accepted into the United States Military Academy at West Point. How's this COVID crisis treating you? How's the shut-in and quarantine season been for you?
I still wake up in the morning, and you'd think at this point I would be adjusted, and I still wake up and cannot believe that this is going on. In my lifetime, I don't know that we'll ever see anything like this again. My oldest son is, I will say the hardest on him is he is a senior in high school, and he had just started his final year of his soccer season, and they were first in the state, and this was going to be the year for the run to the state championship. So it's been harder on him because he just lost out on a lot of milestones that he assumed he would get.
Of course.
But the silver lining of this event for me and my family is, I can't tell you the last time we had a sit-down dinner before this happened. We eat at 3 p.m. and then at 10:30 at night. Yeah. And we're all running. 3 kids, 7 sports, and it's all self-induced insanity. But I hate to say it because it sounds like I'm being tone deaf, and I'm not trying to be. But it's been a nice wake-up call, and we've all had time to kind of take a breath and reflect on how I'm spending my time when I have freedom to leave the house.
Right. And now the question's going to be, Deb, whenever this season ends or transitions to something else, how do you keep from going back to that old life? Or do you plan to go back to the way things were?
Yeah, I tell you, I'm nervous about that because I don't know if I have the strength to push away the stuff that I know down deep I really should walk away from in order to focus my energy on things that are really important.
Yeah, that's funny how easy that is to do, right? How easy it is to
absolutely
say yes to everything.
I honestly, I can see it. I can see what's going to happen. And it's like watching a train crash in slow motion.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm really hoping that I can figure something out before that happens.
I think we're all hoping that, including churches, and all of us are hoping that this isn't going to be going back to normal as it was before, that we can walk faithfully into a new normal, right? That's what the hope is. Debbie works as the IT director for a church. Unlike many of her coworkers who've been all in with Christianity for years, Debbie calls herself a reluctant believer. She says she has to wake up some mornings and remind herself why she's still a Christian.
I grew up with a mom who was a hippie and a father who was a Southern Baptist, and I mean Southern Baptist. And I remember going to visit my dad's side of the family, and, it was all about Jesus all the time. And then there was the N-word in almost the same sentence. Wow. And I just remember, even as a little kid, that struck me as odd, and I just remember not liking it. And so that was kind of my perception of religious people. So when I hear the word Jesus and people conforming to that way of thinking, it just made the hair stand up on the back of my head.
It wasn't until Debbie was allowed to ask the hard questions and explore her doubts in her 30s that she started to understand Jesus, and she made the choice to call herself a believer.
I just referred to Jesus as Steve, and that way, I didn't have the hair stand up on the back of my neck, and I could get over that stuff. And so when he baptized me, he actually baptized me in the name of Steve.
I don't know why I love this story so much.
It's a great story.
It is a great story.
That's why your podcast resonates so much with me, is because the stuff I was saying or thinking I couldn't say out loud. But then when your podcast came out, I'm like, you're the only guy that I know that has said that stuff out loud before. And so it really struck a nerve with me.
That's cool. I'm honored. Thank you. Debbie admits she still struggles every time a new question comes up that challenges her faith. She feels like she's losing and finding her faith over and over again. She's worried that makes her a bad Christian, but I think it makes her a great one. I know the Bible says Jesus is the shepherd and we're the sheep, but sheep don't ask questions. Sheep are kind of dumb. God doesn't want us to be like sheep. He wants us to be his kids. And if you've ever been around kids for any length of time, you know that their questions never stop. So Debbie, if you're listening, don't ever stop being curious. Don't ever stop taking all your questions straight to God. He can take all your doubts and transform them into deeper faith. After our episode on Can Loving Illegals Save Our Souls, someone I hadn't seen in 5 years wrote to us about the episodes and how they wrecked her, and she wanted to help. That's just the kind of person Jess has always been. Today, she leads a campus ministry in Louisiana. So are y'all on total lockdown in Lafayette?
No, we are the land of the free here. So it seems like the precautions that even stores were trying to keep as far as spacing out visitors and things like that just went away. I don't even know if we lasted a week.
Yeah. Have you known anybody that's had COVID?
Yeah, we had a guy at our church die.
Really?
One of our pastors here lost his brother. My sister and her husband both work in the hospital, and so they've obviously seen cases. It's not near as widespread here as it was in New Orleans.
Yeah, of course. So, not to get too terribly personal too quick, but are you living with someone?
Court and I closed on our house the Monday that the stay-at-home went into effect at 5 p.m. So we literally skated in under the wire to be able to get into our new home.
Wow.
And to be in the same place with someone that you love and care about is just such a gift right now, because I know people that are alone are feeling extra alone in these times.
I met Jess when she showed up to the church I was leading in Kansas City before I really knew Jesus for myself. That church was called Revolution, and it was a collection of characters and vagabonds from all walks of life. Jess walked in with her then girlfriend, and she immediately fit right in. Her smile has always been infectious, and she's just the kind of person that everybody loves. After my radical experience with Jesus in 2013, a lot of my views changed, including my understanding of God's will for human sexuality. Looking back, I'm sure it's been a shock for someone like Jess to witness my theological 180 since that time. Give me some idea, Jess, as you listened to those 2 episodes on LGBTQ issues and the church. Give me some idea of what you were saying back to your iPhone as you listened.
Well, I thought I'm just going to speak real candidly on this.
Go.
My relationship isn't based on sex, which is where I really wrestle with gay people being allowed to make the covenant of marriage. And then, it boils down to the sex thing, which I think people are infatuated with. And I think people are hung up on, I have to be partnered. And that's not a gay or a straight thing. That's just like, if I'm single, I'm less than. And I think that's crap.
Yeah.
But also, I do not have this wild, extravagant lifestyle. I like puzzles. I like Candy Crush. We watch Grey's Anatomy, and we cook. And to me, that is the essence of 90-something% of marriages and long-term relationships. It's about so much more than the sex. And so to make judgments based on that and quantify or qualify it because of that specifically seems like something we would never do to a straight couple.
Right. I'll just tell you, I love that you are telling me this, and I cherish your trust in telling me this, because I do think there was a gap in those episodes that we didn't cover and voices that weren't heard, and I think yours is one of them, and I'm just so grateful to hear that from you today.
Yeah, for sure. These are conversations that people need to have, and you don't have to agree 100% all the way through to be in community with people and to love people. If that's our measuring stick for starting relationships with people, like, you're never going to meet anybody new. You're never going to love anybody new.
I love that. No, I think that's why I like you so much, because we agree on that point, and that is so essential to, I just think, all human interactions and relationships.
One of the most powerful kind of God moments I had in church was at a Good Friday service. Your mom and dad had actually come up when we were in Kansas City, and I just remember being completely shaken during your message. And I don't, Eric, I'll be honest, I don't know if it's something that you would still say today, but in that moment, you said that Good Friday is for this people and this people and these people, and you said, and Good Friday is for our gay brothers and sisters who've been told they don't have a place in church. And cue the waterworks, because I had never heard anyone in a church setting say that it was okay for me to be there as the human being that I was. And that was powerful for me.
Well, I remember the email where you sent me saying, Eric, don't feel bad about the time when you were faking it, when you weren't believing the things you were saying, because I do carry around some guilt about, for a period of time in my life, I preached stuff that I didn't really believe, or I preached wrong things and things like that. And,
right.
And you were one of the few that wrote me from Kansas City to say, hey, God used you then to keep me in his orbit. And that was like, talk about waterworks. That's when I lost it.
Yeah.
You said something before, Jess, that I have to circle back to, because I heard a little bit of uncertainty in your voice when you said it. And you said, referring to what I said on that Good Friday about you having a place in church, and you said, I'm not sure if you would still say it today, Eric, but when you said it then, it mattered. And I hope you know that as I've changed and grown and evolved in some of my theology, my views, like, that is one thing that has not changed. The idea that you belong in church with Jesus as you are, I hope that never changes about me, because you are a living, breathing testament to God's grace and beauty and truth, and I see his image in you. So
yeah,
I love you.
Well, I love you, and I appreciate you saying that. Do we agree on everything? No. Do we believe in people's worth and value as children of God? I would think yes.
Amen.
And like, if that's where we start, that's where we start. If the only thing we can agree on is that we are loved and valued because we exist, that's where we'll start.
Hello?
Hi, this is Eric from the Maybe God podcast.
Hi, Eric. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing? Our mission with this podcast is to inspire people to love God, especially people who've experienced the dark side of organized religion, and Christianity in particular. When I read the Bible, I find a God who is love, and I want the world to know that. That's why it's a little extra special whenever we receive emails from people who are self-described atheists, like this man, who I called recently. He asked that we don't share his real name, so we'll call him John. I think John's motivation for reaching out to Maybe God may have been a little bit different than our other listeners. As I understand it, you and the Maybe God producer, Julie, who I call Julie Miraculous, you guys go way back.
Yeah, I've known her since 5th grade.
Since the 5th grade, okay.
Yes. All throughout high school, we just kind of always ended up hanging out. Her and I never had a curfew, so after parties, we'd just go hang out and campfire or go on some weird random adventure or just kind of hang out. We were always friends, never awkward moments of love or anything like that.
Julie and John grew up in a small town in central Massachusetts. They haven't seen each other in nearly 20 years. Last he'd heard, Julie was working in Chicago for Oprah. So he tried Googling her one day and found out that she was now living in Houston, and her new boss was yours truly.
And then I came across your podcast, and I was just shocked when she lives in Texas now.
How did it strike you at first to know that she was working for a church and a Christian now and all that stuff?
It caught me off guard, just because I didn't know her as a religious person.
Uh-huh.
Not many of us in that town went to church.
Right.
Yeah, it just wasn't a thing.
When you think of Christians, do you think of people that are understanding and non-judgmental, or do you have a negative view of Christians?
So I was baptized Lutheran. My parents were from the northern Midwest. And when I was 3, my dad got a new job that was going to pay more than whatever he's ever made. He was working 3 jobs at the time. And we just had to move to Arkansas, a little town in Arkansas called Harrison, which not a lot of people know about.
No, I'm almost from Arkansas, but I don't know that Harrison rings a bell.
So Harrison is the mailing address of the Ku Klux Klan.
Wow.
It was the type of scenario where if you weren't Southern Baptist, you're better off to say you're not religious. So the whole community, it was basically church fairs and weekends and carnivals. Everything was kind of around the church.
Yeah.
Then you had the Klan aspect. So we bought a boat, and basically every weekend we went to a lake. I loved fishing. I grew up doing that. Just because we didn't really hang out in town too much.
Yeah.
And that's when we really stopped going to church.
The whole story you're telling is interesting, and in some ways it's familiar. I find myself apologizing for Christians a lot. For anything from the Ku Klux Klan to handsy priests to Christians who are just a little too judgmental and mean. And I find myself, as a first step in conversations with people who don't believe, just saying, I'm sorry. I pray that one day you'll be able to look at Christianity honestly without the filter of these negative experiences. That's my fervent prayer, because I know that stuff is real.
Yeah.
John still lives in Massachusetts. He's married and has 3 sons. When we started talking about his COVID reality, it's a lot different from anyone else we talked to. It's not a nice, peaceful break from his everyday life. In fact, he's been in total isolation for 1 year now.
What everyone's kind of freaking out about, common flu. I had a 30% survival rate. With COVID, I have a 10%. So
wow.
I'm pretty used to, actually right now I'm in a category of do not treat, which is kind of scary.
Yeah, that is terrifying. In 2019, right after turning 40, John decided to head to the doctor's office for a routine physical for the first time in 3 years. As soon as the doctor looked at his blood work, John realized something wasn't right.
And he goes, "Did you fast before you took this?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, we're going to need to rerun this." And he's like, "You have pancyclopedia." And it's basically all my counts of my red blood cells, white blood cells, plasma were about a third of what the low was.
Wow. If John had waited another few weeks to see the doctor, he could have been dead. Within days, he was admitted to Boston's prestigious Dana-Farber Cancer Institute.
All of a sudden, I'm in the back of an ambulance going to Dana-Farber thinking, hopefully this is something that we can just take care of. And then I hit the cancer floor. And they're all air-controlled rooms. I'm looking in the rooms as they're reeling me in. Like, no one's got hair. Everyone looks like they're in rough shape. And I was like, maybe this is a little more serious than I thought.
Yeah.
It turned out I have acute myeloid leukemia. So there's two basic types of leukemia. Not a lot of people know about it. Chronic or acute. Anyone that does know about it, as soon as they hear acute, they'll make a face of ooh.
Yeah. Did you have a stem cell transplant?
I ended up having one, yes.
How long ago was that?
July 9th.
Okay. So you're still in this period where you can't be exposed to any kind of infections?
No. So since that, if the kids were sick or had a cold, I have a 4-year-old that's a walking petri dish. I'm masked and gloved up in the house. I have a leather recliner that, gets wiped down and no one's allowed to sit in. And then no one was allowed in our bedroom. So when any of them had a sniffles or spot or anything, a fever, I freaked out.
Right.
At the first 100 days after a bone marrow transplant is real critical. And like the common cold could kill you.
Right. So this has been your reality for some time, this kind of isolated living situation. And you've got 3 kids, ages 4 and what else?
4, 10, and 11, all boys.
Wow. I'm exhausted just thinking about it. I mean, this has been just one storm after another for you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Since John's chances of surviving COVID-19 are so small, no one in his family is able to come into contact with other people. He and his wife have both had to quit their jobs. They have everything delivered to their house where they wipe it all down. And they've settled into homeschooling knowing that this may be their reality not just until the summer, but until COVID-19 isn't a headline anymore. John says this season of his life hasn't changed how he feels about God. He doesn't have any reason to believe that there is a God at all. I remember you making mention to science in your email, and it was a really profound question, I thought. Like, how can someone who doesn't believe in God come to believe in God while depending entirely on science to keep me alive? I find it fascinating to think about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the closest spiritual thing I've ever felt is karma. If you do good things will happen to you. By no means was I ever a saint, but I wasn't a bad guy. I tried to do a lot of good things. Now I just kind of explain it as bad luck. I am so happy it happened to me and not my wife or one of my children.
Yeah. Sometimes I think people that maintain faith through seasons like this are more surprising than people that have none, because you see too much, you experience too much pain, and it raises too many questions about how a good God could let something like this happen to people. The way I look at it is just a little bit differently. I think the Bible that I read says God doesn't prevent us from every suffering. He doesn't micromanage our lives, but he goes into the suffering with us. He walks us through it. He experienced it himself in Jesus. And have you had any thoughts about what might be waiting beyond this life?
What I think about for afterlife is my legacy that I leave behind. Like my children, are they going to be okay? My wife, are they going to be okay?
Yeah.
Friends and family. I don't think about me.
I know a lot of people who believe what John believes, that this life is all that really matters, and there's nothing to look forward to after we die. But even believing that this life matters can be a starting point on a journey toward deeper faith. Julie told me a story about John after I spoke with him. She said the last time that she remembers seeing him, she was 19 years old and home for the summer after a tumultuous freshman year. She got herself into some trouble. She won't tell me what exactly happened, but one morning at 6 a.m., she called John from a payphone. He was the only person that she felt comfortable turning to. And sure enough, John drove almost an hour from his parents' new house to be there with her, all day until she felt better. He didn't ask questions, he didn't judge, he was just there for her. Julie didn't know Jesus back then, but she realizes now that Jesus was with her then, through her friend John.
Over here, you can see much clearer. What you wanted was always only what we needed.
As I listened to John, I heard a man of faith. He believes in things like love, loyalty, and life. But like a lot of people, he's had one too many negative experiences with religion to call himself a believer. The good news is, if God is real, when the day comes for John to meet his Maker, all he will see is love, and all he'll need to say is yes. In the meantime, I hope you'll join me in praying for that day to come many, many years from now. You may not be much for prayer, but I am praying for you today and in the days ahead, for you and your family. I hope that God makes himself known to you in some way that that blows your mind and that outshines all the darkness of religion that you've experienced in the past.
I really appreciate that. I need all the help I can get.
Won't give up, won't give in. Take everything we have and let the new begin.
Hi, I can't take your call right now.
Hello?
Hi, is Christina there?
No, you probably got the wrong number.
Oh man, I'm sorry. Thank you.
No problem.
It took a few days, but we did eventually track down Christina in Alberta. I was anxious to check in on her since she'd emailed us in 2018 about a major battle she was facing with depression, a battle that caused her to question God's very existence. As a pastor and someone who struggled with depression myself in the past, I especially worry about people with a history of mental illness during this pandemic.
Hello.
Hello, Christina.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm so good. I'm so glad to hear your voice.
Yes, good to hear yours. I'm like, it's a little bit...
When I finally got her on the phone, Christina told me it was understanding God's love in some small ways through this podcast that helped her cope with what she calls the toughest year of her life.
I don't think I really truly understood how much God loves us. And I think that was the biggest thing, is because, like, I'm quite hard on myself. I like being perfect. And of course, the older I get, the more I realize that it's not really anything that's possible, and it's perfect isn't necessarily the most ideal either.
Right.
So I think it was really just, first and foremost, just understanding how valuable and how loved I was to God, because I had always been thinking like of doing enough to make me justify myself as being worthy enough to being loved. Whereas like it's just, at that point I was at the end of myself. I wasn't in the best mindset. In my mind, I had been the previous couple years, or the first year and a bit of my marriage, I had been trying to be the perfect wife. I'd been trying to manage a business perfectly. I'd been trying to be the perfect friend, and that kind of all collapsed. And just knowing that even though I was at the most broken, God still wanted me, and God still loved me, and that there was hope for it.
Christina says she's never been as close to God as she feels today, and that her relationship with God is what makes it possible for her to keep smiling, even when the world around her feels dark and hopeless.
I mean, there's lots of things that aren't fun, and there's lots of disappointments right now, but there's also, I think, a lot of really neat things that are happening, and even just the fact that people are easy to talk with. Like, I go on a walk and people in my neighborhood want to say hello, and that, which is, it's just really neat, I think.
Right. No, I've noticed the same. I hope this episode has been a worthy tribute to you, the listeners of Maybe God. Our team is so grateful for you. You've blessed us more than you could possibly know over the past couple of years. And I know these are scary times we're living in, but I hope this episode has reminded you that you're not alone. We're in this together. And more importantly, God is in it with us. Even when we can't see him or feel his presence, he's there, protecting us, walking with us, showing us a better way to live. We couldn't end today's episode without one final rapid-fire question that we asked everyone we called, and that, if nothing else, makes the Maybe God team feel pretty good about ourselves. Thanks for listening, everyone. Be honest here, you're stranded in quarantine for another year. You can only choose one podcast to listen to and no others. Which podcast do you choose?
Oh my God. These two, can I say two?
Only one.
Okay. Oh.
Oof. Yeah, let me think a little bit.
Wow. That I want to think about.
I've actually been listening to Wayne Dwyer, Dr. Dwyer.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So the one that I really probably have listened to consistently the most is a pastor here in North Texas, Matt Chandler, at the Village Church.
I was really hoping you'd say Maybe God.
Oh, I know. There it is. I know. Here's the thing. I was gonna caveat that.
Dr. Dwayne Dwyer.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Wayne Dwyer?
That, probably.
Mm.
Yeah.
And you realize I just perfectly set you up to offer me a compliment, and you didn't.
I know. I'm just trying to be honest, though, and I'm going...
I would probably, I think, choose the Chasing Hope.
Oh, wait, that's the Story Houston podcast.
Yes.
Yeah, that's us.
Yeah.
You know, I don't listen to many podcasts, but I listen to yours, and I check back every now and then to see if you got something new on there. So I guess I would say Maybe God.
That's exactly the answer that I'm looking for. That's correct.
Yeah, it probably is.
Oh, that's easy. It's yours.
I love you, Deb.
Well, tonight, and this is my disclaimer, it's the only podcast I listen to. So
you're not supposed to say that part. Come on, I was feeling so good about myself.
I'm trying to be honest.
Well, sometimes you can be honest and hold back the stuff that hurts. This episode of Maybe God was produced by Julie Mirlicourtois and Eric and Giovanna Huffman. Our new associate producers are Andrea Gentle and Kat Bruff, and Shannon Steffen and Justin Mayer are our talented editors. Please don't forget to leave us your glowing reviews on iTunes or Apple Podcasts to help more people find Maybe God. Thank you.